All of the world's holy books have pointed to this exact period in time to clock the end of times through large and thorough prophecies that are meant to set up the stage for what we are experiencing and facing within the spirit of this age. Things like Mark of the Beast, Revelations, a final judgment day, and much more. So what we experience in this age are very strong narratives that have pulsed all throughout time to this point in time, where now we're coming to some precipice point. And within this time period, now we're supposed to be experiencing such themes as the Mark of the Beast and all of these different events that are leading up to the end of times. And so what we're going to be doing today is actually deconstructing what exactly the book of Revelations is and what that has to do with this exact time period. Because as some people might be viewing the book of Revelations and this time period as the end of times, in the esoteric sphere, this is completely rewired to look like unity consciousness and actually the revealing, the apocalypse of the beginning of the age of Aquarius. When we're looking at the strongest theological evidence for the end of times, what we're mainly referring to is the book of Revelations. Now, what's the most important thing to understand right off the bat is that the book of Revelations was renamed. Its original name was the Apocalypsis. And the Apocalypsis, which now we know as the Apocalypse, means an unveiling, and to reveal what is behind that veil. So what we're actually talking about now is something that is between us and a larger worldview. And that's truly what the book of Revelations is based off of from the esoteric perspective. So the book of Revelations was called that in order to change the whole narrative into something that is taking place externally, in the exterior or exoteric sphere, when in reality, the apocalyptic was meant to be between us and our larger, higher self. So what the apocalypse or unveiling actually isn't something of the end of times. It's just the end of times as we know it. Instead, it's when we are revealing to ourselves our true identity. And our true identity is oneness. If you'd like to learn more about oneness, you can watch my video on it, oneness. And even what we'll find just by deconstructing the name Revelations is that there's a revealing. And so this revealing is one that is taking place depending on the person's level of consciousness. If we're operating at a very baseline, lower level of consciousness, known as base consciousness, then we're going to be experiencing everything external because we have not created enough strength internally. And so if we haven't done enough inner work internally, we can't build up into experiencing what's going to be revealed internally. So that energy will still go somewhere. It will just go completely outsourced and external to us. In which case, what we're experiencing is whatever is written for us. And that's what's really important to understand. It's that your level of consciousness will determine what is being revealed, what is being unveiled. So the higher up in the level of consciousness we go, what we'll see is that what's being unveiled is any layers that are standing between us and our smaller egoic self and oneness or enlightenment. And so sometimes we might think of enlightenment in this like really larger than life type of concept and put it way high up on a mountain peak. But that's just not the case. We've had enough lifetimes, we've had enough experiences and even mastery in order to build up into something within this age that can actually just come more as our natural essence, more like us coming home. And that's what's really being experienced with something like enlightenment or its other name, oneness. So these different types of consciousness levels are going to be determining exactly what level we experience the unveiling or the revelations at. And so that's why there's a very strong and thoroughly, robustly constructed narrative far before this age that was pointing in prophecy to this time period being the end of times, but not for the reasons that they suggest or that they're trying to necessarily push on the human collective. Because the end of times is something that is looked at base level consciousness once again. And base level consciousness, that just means the lowest level of consciousness, is also known in esoterica as 666, or the mark of the beast. Now, what's important to understand about base level consciousness is that its dominant expression is through fear. So you're the easiest controlled when you're operating in fear. But imagine now that fear is your dominant reality. So even at a subconscious level, even if we don't think that we're operating based off of fear 24/7, it's still going on subconsciously, and it's showing and leaking through all of our different actions and motives. So fear constructs and it shapes our external reality in very real ways, not just ways that are happening inside our mind. They leak through our actions. And so because of that, what we're seeing is that everything that takes place at a lower level of consciousness, like base consciousness, isn't just fearful thoughts. They're everything that make up the frequency of fear. But our frequency isn't just made up through our thoughts. Our frequency is built through our thoughts, emotions, actions, belief systems, and intentions. And when you combine all 5 of those together, you create Captain Planet. No, I'm just kidding. You create frequency. And so what frequency does is it's supposed to raise. And as it rises, there is a revelations that happens. And as our frequency raises from beast consciousness into an unveiling, and it gets revealed that we are God consciousness. And that is also what I'm calling oneness, but also what's known as unity consciousness, because it's not just saying that we are God alone. That would be the shadow side of oneness. But oneness means everything is God. So that's why I'm calling it God consciousness. And once we enter God consciousness from the beast, that journey up, raising our frequency, is the revelations through that ascension upwards. That's the apocalypse. And that is the esoteric meaning of the book of Revelations, also originally known as the Apocalypsis. The book of Revelations reads like a vision quest through time. Its most overarching themes are of Judgment Day, a second coming, the mark of the beast, and a persistent battle between good and evil that takes place both inside and outside of time, suggesting this book is also referring to eternal themes. Like many other, this text was intentionally manipulated to conceal the truth about our human identity and position us in a subordinate state to divine powers in order to continue promoting worship and religious programming. But when we look deeper into its meaning, the book of Revelations can be experienced through its esoteric dimensions. Let's explore those. The hyperdimensional spiritual battle taking place between good and evil are the lower and higher thought forms of service to all and service to self that are always present and always influencing us. The different animals inside this text have multiple meanings. The first layer is that animals are commonly used in spiritual texts as symbols of nations. But the second layer is that animals represent different archetypes inside our consciousness. So, when we take on a specific pattern of acting and perceiving, it can be associated with an animal form that holds that same energy. The 7 churches represent the 7 alchemical stages of transmutation of our light body as we ascend. The 4 horses represent events that take place before Judgment Day. But from an esoteric perspective, they also represent the different auras our energy field can emanate from the different spiritual forces and influences we align ourselves with. And low-key, the 4 horses remind me of the 4 humors of body fluids that rule a person's emotional temperament. So this vision could have been tapping into the alchemical process that the human form is undergoing as it awakens. The mark of the beast is our lower 3 energy centers when they are cut off from the higher energy centers. It is our earthly nature when it is fully bound to its material possessions, lust, greed, and separation consciousness. This separation is also known as fear, and that's why all of the Mark of the Beast prophecies are fear-based. So, you have to see how if we don't experience this text from its deeper dimensions, it can be telling us truths, like there's a spiritual battle, but while also twisting the truth at the same time. It can be used by groups to control our perception of who we really are and prepare us for events by putting us into the very fear that will create those outcomes. My point is not that fear is bad and that everything is fine. My point is far more nuanced than that. It's that the breakthroughs and the outer transformation we will see are entirely dependent on the inner transmutation we have gone through. And that the moment we read this text as purely external, we have become trapped in programming and have not developed the spiritual sight for a true awakening. And this is also why judgment is a very strong theme inside the book of Revelations. It's because judgment is very core and important to this whole concept of coming into a larger revelation, but not for the exact reasons you might think. Judgment means an awakening. It not just only means an awakening, it means a return. And a return of an awakening could kind of sound like a second coming. And what's returning or a second coming would be a level of remembrance or a level of remembering, reawakening. It is to literally take your different members and put them together. Remember. So even having a final judgment day is really saying that there's a return of an awakening that's taking place. And beyond that, that's heavily linked with karma. And we even know this in the tarot. Judgment is a highly spiritual awakening card, but it's also the theme of there being a strong karma, a divine karma that is being strucken down. And that divine karma striking down actually means that we have to recalibrate in order to come into oneness. So what we have to do is be able to balance and recalibrate our own karma. This just means things that we have done out of unconsciousness. And so that in and of itself, can you see how that's just another way of saying, oh, we have to become aware? So even judgment is a parallel concept to revelations. It just comes with a heavy consequence if we are not made aware. So judgment there has many different sides to it. And that's what you'll find in all esoteric topics. In all of reality, there's going to be the things that we see and that are face value. And when we see those things at their outermost layer, the most face value layer, that's called the exoteric, kind of like an exoskeleton. But then there's also these deeper meanings, just like an onion has many different layers that go deeper into it. And so all of these different terms of revelations and apocalypse and judgment, they have more than one facet, more than one side to them. And so one of the beautiful sides of judgment that then gets totally stripped of its nuance and of its substance, when we're looking at it through the most fundamental religious lens, is this concept of judgment, an internal reckoning. It is an internal process where we're literally just being seen transparently for how we're vibrating. And so judgment, among the other ways that I have mentioned it, is also not a judgment at all on one side of the coin. Because what judgment is saying in this level that I'm speaking about judgment, when it comes to the end of times, judgment is saying, as you are right now, meaning what your body, mind, spirit, what your frequency has evolved into, is what will be experienced. So judgment means the second coming because there is a return of an awakening taking place. And that awakening, or remembering, is when we have entered unity consciousness, also known as Christ consciousness or oneness. And judgment also means you're being measured, calibrated, and deeply seen as you are, beyond all of your words. You are deeply seen for the truth of your vibration. But what this judgment is calibrating is our frequency's service to self or service to all's orientation. And then the third layer of judgment is a divine karma that balances our body, mind, spirit into God consciousness. So whatever karma we have not rectified, then the universe will show that to us through really intense reflections. And that's also another layer of what judgment would mean in this case. It would mean that something has to have divine intervention strike inside karma because we are not aligning ourselves with our own free will into a higher state of consciousness. I hope this has revealed revelations. Make sure to subscribe to my channel for higher dimensional guidance through spiritual awakening. See you next time.